Hi everyone, Morgan here, and this is part of the 30 Days of Preparedness collaboration taking place during September of 2022 for National Preparedness Month. Please take a look at the other collaborators down below in the description. This is such an exciting collaboration. Everyone has so many cool things to share, and I'm just excited to see everybody's videos. This video is about how to live without electricity. So I want to first give you a fun fact. Did you know that while electricity was invented long before the 1930s, and many places like in New York City and some other large cities like that had electricity in the 1920s, it didn't actually become common for urban areas until the 1930s. Most urban cities had electricity in the 1930s. However, rural places still didn't have electricity for even decades later. It took a long time to get electricity out into those rural areas. But my point is, it's taken less than 100 years for us as a society to completely conform to our modern way of living. We have not just conformed, but completely forgot about how we could ever live without it. And it's not really a surprise because of the way that we live. We live with everything at our fingertips, literally. We live with air conditioning, which was never even a thing for a long time. In fact, I grew up in Oregon and air conditioning wasn't a thing in Oregon, okay? But my point is, you may be thinking, well, of course, that was the North, people in the South, they couldn't live without electricity, without, air conditioning and electricity. But that is just far from the truth. People have lived without electricity in all parts of the world for centuries, eons and eons. In fact, people still live without electricity and air conditioning in the desert and in hot areas. They figured out ways to adapt. They figured out ways to build homes so that they are energy efficient with adobe homes and earth sheltered homes and brick homes and concrete homes, all these homes to help keep you a little bit cooler. They found ways to stay cool. And as a society, we have really gone away from that. We built very inefficient homes. Of course, now we're trying to turn more into efficient homes, with the insulation and all that, but it's still wood houses that are, trying to be insulated the best they can, but they're still, to a degree, not as efficient as people used to build their homes. However, I digress. Insulation really, really helps. It makes a big deal in the cold and the warm. Okay, so as I'm talking all about this, I'm trying to get you into the mindset of living without electricity. And, we lived off grid for 2 years, and it opened our mind to how we could adapt and change our ways of doing things. For instance, I loved my dehydrator. In fact, I use it all the time. You guys see my videos of doing it. There's no way that I could use my dehydrator on our on the off-grid system that we had on our solar system. This is what we built, and this is called a solar dehydrator. Guess what? That's how people used to do it way back in the day. They would dry things with the power of the sun. So that's how I learned. They also cooked with the power of the sun. They made smokers, from their fires. They do all, they built their own homes. They cut down trees, for wood, for their wood stoves to stay warm, and all these things. And so I think we've just really gone away from that, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with living in modern society, but I think we really have to think about ways to live without it as well. Because I'll tell you what, none of this stuff is guaranteed to us. This electricity, not guaranteed. This little internet box that we're on right now, not guaranteed, okay? Air conditioning, not guaranteed. In fact, I don't know if you've heard, but California has been having rolling blackouts because of the extreme heat that they've been having and the high AC demand. So they had rolling blackouts. And, that's a little ironic, but I'll have to go back to that later. Anyway, and it was threatened that because of the extreme heat across the nation, that there were going to be rolling blackouts. It's not, something brand new. They've been doing this for a long time. Back in 2020 was the first time that I talked about the rolling blackouts happening in California. And they did that a lot because they turned off power because it was high winds, and they didn't want to cause wildfires, that kind of thing. So that was something they also did. Anyway, my point is electricity, AC, the internet, water flowing through your faucets, unless you're on a well. Even if you're on a well, nothing is guaranteed. So we have to have layers and layers and layers to make sure that we can continue to not just survive, but thrive, whether we have electricity or not, right? And this is the thought that went through my head when we lived off grid. Well, we don't have access to my dehydrator anymore. How am I going to do that? Well, it's really hot in here. I don't want to turn, my tiny little RV, I don't want to turn on the oven. Okay, I will make, food in my solar oven. Well, I want to run, my KitchenAid. Okay, well, I'm going to do it during peak time when I have lots of energy to use. And, I'm going to run my washing machine when I have peak time, my energy, but we didn't have a dryer. We hung things, right? We did not have a septic. We had a composting toilet. And I love composting toilets because you don't use water as a resource, and they're just great. They're just really efficient ways to go to the bathroom. It's just like an outhouse, it's a very efficient composty way of doing things. So I want you to think outside of the box. Literally think, what would I do if I did not have electricity? Do I have backup energy sources? What would I even want to power with those backup energy sources, right? How could I stay cool? How can I stay warm? How can I have light sources? Could I make my own candles? Could I have rechargeable batteries? How am I going to charge that with my alternative energy? How am I going to keep that alternative energy powered, right? Gas, diesel, propane, these are finite resources. And again, nothing guaranteed. The sun isn't guaranteed either. Let me tell you, when we lived off grid with solar, we had many cloudy days. When it rained, we got nothing. There were many times in which we had to power our solar with our generator, right? But we also now have backup systems like our backup solar generators and things like that. So, you could have the dual fuel. You can stock up on some fuel. Propane lasts a very long time. It's a lot more efficient and longer lasting than, say, gas. But diesel lasts even a little bit longer than that. And there's lots of ways to make your own type of biofuel and things like that. So there's a lot of things to consider. What about transportation? If it's a long-term thing, what are you going to do? If you have a gas-powered vehicle, eventually you are going to have to do something if you don't have enough gas to power that vehicle anymore. You're going to ride around a skateboard or some skates or a bicycle, maybe an e-powered bicycle with a little trailer behind it. Yeah. What about, a horse and buggy? Maybe we got to go back to that. There's a lot of options out there. But the point that I'm making and I'm trying to, bestow upon you is none of this stuff is guaranteed. And I want you to seriously look around your house, look around your life and say, if I did not have access to this, what would I do? If I did not have access to electricity, what would I do? What would I power? What would I want to continue to power? My freezer, these kinds of things. What would I still want to have at my disposal? When we lived off grid, we still had a full freezer. We still had a fridge. These are all energy efficient things. We still had, I could still use my KitchenAid whenever I wanted. Occasionally we used a microwave a couple times. I didn't have it a ton. I didn't use it a lot because that drew a lot of power, but we used it sometimes. We still had internet. We still had all these things. We charged, we were able to still watch TV, and we don't have cable, but we were able to watch, Hulu or whatever else we wanted, YouTube. We were able to charge batteries and we used a lot of solar products. And so there's just a lot to consider with these types of things. I also had an indoor garden where I had, grow lights. I also had a little chick brooder that we powered. So you know, we didn't have a ton of stuff. Like, you know, we use AC now, which takes an absurd amount of energy. But people kind of don't think about how much energy we're using and how many resources we're using, because why think about it when I can just flick on a switch or turn a knob, right? There's no reason to think about this stuff. But I want you as a prepper to really think about this and say, how am I going to continue these resources? How could I continue a sort of normal lifestyle without being connected to a grid, without being connected to city water, without being connected to, you know, the city power, that kind of thing? How could I live without it? Lots of people have, lots of people still do. It is entirely possible. You can survive, you can thrive. We just have to think about it. Now, I have an entire blog post down below that goes into detail about this stuff and things you should consider. I also have a ton of checklists, and I've also linked to a couple other videos. I have an entire blackout series that goes into detail about how we can be prepared for this stuff. So I've linked that down below as well. If you have medical issues or medical devices that you need electricity for, there are options. You can get those alternative energy sources to keep these things going. You can, you know, there's lots of options. So I want you to really look into this stuff, think about it, and understand that anything is possible as long as we are prepared. Thank you all so much for watching. Please go down to the description and get those resources, as well as going to the playlist for this 30 days of preparedness and seeing all the other videos and subscribing to all the other channels. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, whatever you were doing. Conquer tomorrow by preparing today. Let's be prepared no matter what happens, on grid or off. I'll talk to you later. Conquer tomorrow by preparing today. Bye-bye.